wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about your exit experience. As you know, I'm doing this event on September 17th for founders within 3 years of an exit. And you and I worked together. How long ago has it been now since you had your exit? Is it more than 2 years?
Yeah, boy, I guess it's going on almost 3 years.
Is it really? Oh my gosh. Wow.
Wow. So I think it was the exit itself when I left the business was about 2 years ago. But the
Uh-huh.
actual event
Oh yeah, because you
of
stayed
change,
around till April. Yeah, I remember.
yeah, the
Okay.
change of ownership event was actually it was 3 years ago this month. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Congratulations. How's it going?
Going well. Thank you.
Um, I would love to hear if you're willing to go back because, well, tell everybody how you got the CEO role in the first place, because it wasn't like you were really looking for it.
Right. Why don't
Yeah.
we start with that's a fun story in and of itself. I mean,
Yeah.
because I thought it was informative actually. This job, for me, this position was the choice of going with a small company or a large company.
Uh-huh.
And in 2016, it was really at the encouragement of my spouse that I went with a small, unknown company, software as a service company
Uh-huh.
in the healthcare space, and versus a big corporate job. And part of that was just the big corporate jobs they're available, they're there, they're always going to be there,
Yeah.
and they're also just a little bit for me a tiny bit. I don't know quite how to say it. Soul sucking might be the right word. I don't know. They take a lot out of you, a
Yeah.
lot of energy. I know for me, it's like it takes a lot of energy to interact sometimes in the corporate world.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's certainly a great experience, but just from a where do I get my energy perspective, I get more energy from a company that's going from a startup phase to a high growth to an operating company phase. And that's
Mm.
just where I get my energy. And that's where this company was. It was
Uh-huh.
leaving the startup phase and moving into operating company phase. And
Okay.
I came into the business as head of sales and account management, marketing, basically to grow the business was my charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I did work on that for a while. And then I was reaching a point in the company's history where I was kind of realizing, I think everything I wanted out of business, and I don't know, let me see if I can put this in a good context that your audience will understand. Everything I wanted to achieve professionally,
Uh-huh.
I had achieved.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I had certain financial goals that I had set my whole life, and I had, as I was mentioning to you one other time, I think these financial goals, the more you make, the farther your retirement goal kind of gets off into the future, because the retirement goal is always based on some fraction of what you're currently making. So as
Right.
long as your salary keeps increasing, the amount you need to retire keeps getting farther and farther and farther away. And then it just dawned on me at one point when I was meeting with my financial advisor, like, you're telling me I still have X number of years to work before I can retire. But as I recall this conversation 10 years ago, I've already surpassed the amount of money that we said we needed to retire, right? So it came down to, how do you want to live being the
Right.
question.
Right.
And what's your level of acceptance around that? So anyways, for me, the reason I'm sharing this whole story with you was I had come to a point where I realized I didn't need anything else professionally.
Uh-huh.
Position wise, financially wise, I felt like I had achieved what I was hoping to achieve. And importantly, then, right about that time, there were some things going on in the business. There was a regulatory change that looked like it was going to end the business. Like the way the winds were blowing at the federal level as it relates to healthcare policy looked like it was going to end our business, like it was over.
Wow.
And it was about the same time as, nice try, another startup that didn't make it, whatever. These things
Yeah.
happen.
And you,
And
from the context of, and as far as retirement goes, I'm good.
right. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, okay.
so maybe it's time for me to bow out. And
Yeah.
this was all sort of internal. Okay. This wasn't an active discussion. I wasn't like going to the board saying, oh gosh, I really think I really think I've achieved everything. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
let's be honest. This was an internal dialogue, not an external dialogue. But what's funny about the internal dialogue is that my consciousness, my core self, made agreement with this dialogue. It's
Uh-huh.
like, oh yeah, I really do have enough. Like I really don't need anything else. The funny thing is, once that happened, it was only a few short weeks before the then CEO and chairman asked me if I would step in as a role, replacing him as CEO.
Uh-huh.
And it was a most satisfying thing, because it's almost like once I had let go of the need for any further advancement or the need for any further financial reward, or when I really made agreement that I didn't need any of that, that's sort of when it happened without me asking.
Yeah.
And I had the exact opposite happen to me in 2015. In 2015, I was being actively considered for a CEO role, me and one other candidate. And that one, I was really striving, being political, working the board, I was doing everything the opposite way. I really needed it. I really wanted it. I really had to have it. I was really pushing. And that one I didn't get. And so this was a totally fascinating experience, because once I said, oh, I'm good, whatever happens, then I was really, really, really happy to, and felt really privileged, because I was taking over for a founder CEO. And for a founder CEO to imagine the level of awareness it takes for a founder CEO to say, I'm ready to step out and be the chairman and really let someone else run the company. That takes a tremendously mature, it takes someone who's really puts the outlook of the business ahead of their own personal ego.
Yeah.
So I really
as I
give my
recall,
team.
it wasn't like he was ready to retire. He just recognized like the next phase of the company wasn't going to be a phase he was good at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But there's so many founders I know that I've witnessed that run a company beyond their own. The company gets bigger than their own leadership capacity, or it's just at a different phase. It's not at a startup phase. They're great at the startup phase, and it's not at the startup phase anymore.
Yeah.
But yet they hang on, and actually to the company's detriment. So it was borderline, it was unusual. I'll just say that. It was highly unusual that a founder would step out, would recognize their own limitations, and recognize that there's actually a time and a place for their skill, and a time and a place to step aside. So I still feel incredibly lucky to have been a part of that.
And to your credit, Michael, I think showing up as you were, as someone who's like, yeah, I'm just here for the company. I don't have these aspirations of building my kingdom, right? You probably showed up as like, well, if there's anyone in this organization that I can trust to run this when I'm gone, it's Michael.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think that's the key, and that's one of the keys, I would say, as we start to transition into the financial aspect of an exit, which happened after taking the CEO role.
Yeah, and it wasn't really in the cards when you took it, right? That wasn't on the radar yet. Yeah.
No, the political climate was such that no one would even talk to us. We would try to talk to people about investing in our business, and they'd be like, no way, healthcare's too, our business model depended on the regulatory elements of the Affordable Care Act passed by President Obama. And, during President Trump's administration, the news every day was, this is the end of the Affordable Care Act. Literally, I would have people running into my office constantly saying, oh no, today's the end of the Affordable Care Act, which for us would have been catastrophic, would have been the end of the company.
Right.
So no investor would talk to us. I mean, they wouldn't even, call us if, in 4 years. It was basically all we had to do. And so there was no agenda about exiting the business. That just wasn't possible. And our business was a small business that really couldn't diversify. We were all in on this one thing. And so one of the most clever things that we did strategically at that time was we decided to continue investing in our technology, even though it wasn't popular at the federal level. And nobody else did. All of our other competitors stopped investing. And we continued to invest. So basically, when President Biden was elected, we had a 4-year technology lead on all of our competitors. And that was a huge strategic decision that, it was just one of those decisions. Well, we're all in. So
it was a big bet, and it paid off.
Right. It was an all or nothing kind of bet. It really was.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was really cool to be a part of that, and then to have a board that would go along with that. Not even go along with it, drive it. So it was really cool.
So President Biden gets elected. You've apparently made the right decision. The Affordable Care Act survives. Your business survives. At what point then because if I remember right, it's not like you decided to shop the company. Someone approached you?
Oh, no, right. What we decided
shopping and then, walk me through that because I don't remember.
Yeah, no, we didn't shop the company because what we realized is we had a 4-year technology advantage. So what we had proposed at that time to the board was we should do a roll-up strategy of all of our competitors because their technology is behind. So we should take all of our other competitors, roll them onto our platform, and basically do a combination strategy. To do that roll-up strategy, we weren't kicking off enough cash to go around buying companies. So we went to private equity to do this roll-up strategy. And we had a number of private equity firms interested in this idea. And they were writing good checks. I mean, there was really attractive money on the table from private equity to do this roll-up strategy. And so that was feeling really good. Then one of our really large strategic corporate competitors, most of our competitors were like us. They were small niche companies, but some were large companies with deep pockets. And one of our large competitors said, that's a great strategy. We're going to do that, only we're going to be the ones buying you. You're not going to be the one buying us. And so that's when it turned from a roll-up strategy to being acquired. And the only reason being is the strategics, I mean, they paid solid. Well, I don't want to go into financials. Let's just say it was a
lot higher than
Let's just say it was more than what venture capital was willing to put out there, and so much more that the board found it like irresistible to not go that direction. And so it was kind of a shock because here we are thinking, oh great, we're going to go buy up all these companies, we're going to be the acquirer, and we're gearing up to do that internally, and then all of a sudden the conversation is, oh wow, we're going to be bought.
And so what did that mean for you personally, just in terms of how you were looking at your role, your potential longevity in that role? Like, what was going on in your head when this was happening?
Well, it's my first priority was to make sure it was a successful transaction.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't even think about myself at all at first. At first, it was all just about how do I make this a success, and for the people that really made this a success, our employees, how do I make it? How do I make it a successful transition for them? And so it all started with that, no question. And
Yeah.
I've always, for me, whether it's a change in role or change in ownership, whatever it is, for me, one of the best ways to keep happy is to just forget about myself and put the company first, put the employees first.
Yeah.
And it's always a happier place for me than when I do think about myself. And when I started really thinking about what is the next role for me, here it is, a large strategic buyer. So I'm back to the decision I was back to in 2015. Should I go back and work for another large corporation? Do I want to be an executive at a large corporation? And I just thought, boy, I didn't want to do it 6 years ago. I'm not sure I want to do it now. And there really wasn't. It's hard once you've had the CEO role. It's such a rewarding role, and the challenges are so unique. It's kind of hard to go back to being a line executive. I'm going to be honest with you.
Sure.
That's difficult.
Sure. Well, and especially if you don't really need to.
Right. And I didn't need to. And
yeah, and you already had enough, and then you get something else out of the exit. It's like now you've got enough plus.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
More than enough. Yeah. And that was just the conclusion I reached. So I already had more than enough, and I didn't necessarily want to go back into being a corporate executive of a functional area or an operation. And the acquirers were so nice and so gracious. And so it absolutely had nothing to do with the acquiring company. They were great. It was just my personal feeling like I didn't need another corporate role on my.
I don't want to be a division head or a whatever, right?
Yep. I could. Yeah. There was no role I felt like I needed to do anymore. That was in the business world, really.
Yeah. So you have retired at this point?
Well, I like to say refocused, but yes, I think the classic American term is retired. And by retired, I mean, well, I guess I was tired. Now I'm actually not tired at all. So I don't know that I'm retired. I'm actually not tired for the first time in many years.
But you're not actively employed anywhere. You're not seeking any employment opportunities. You're just kind of doing your thing, yeah?
I kind of am, yeah. Because for years, not in the last few years, but I would say beginning about 9 or 10 years ago, there was some fundamental shift in me that started realizing there was no achievement that could make me happy. And you know what? Actually, I remember now when this occurred to me. It was when I didn't get that CEO role in 2015.
In 2015, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because that role was going to be like the culmination of everything I had ever learned professionally. CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and just like I thought that was everything I had hoped for professionally. And when that didn't happen, I was just crushed. And my kids had just moved out of the house. I'd become an empty nester, and I didn't get that role. And I basically took a year off. I have a cabin up in northern Minnesota. I went up there and I did my sit at the lake for a year and really reflect on what is the purpose of all of this. And I really started seriously doing some introspection for the first time, thinking, can I really get what I want out of life through professional achievement? Because that was the story. That's the story of America, right?
Yeah,
you
sure.
can get everything you want out of life, you can get through conquering, achieving, cashing out, making some money. Then Once you do that, then you will do the thing that actually makes you happy. And I was really bought into that story. It's like, oh, once I hit this professional level, once I hit this amount of money, once I've achieved these things, once I've given enough, once I've done enough charity work, then I'll be happy. And what started dawning on me in 2015 is, well, wait a second. What if that's not true? What if all that happiness and satisfaction and feeling like enough doesn't come from some external achievement? And it really started sinking in. And I know that sounds obvious now, and probably to some of your listeners, that'll sound like an obvious like conclusion, like, oh, what we're, but yet we've based an entire culture, our entire American culture, on if we can buy something, achieve something, do enough, have enough, recreate enough, then we'll be happy.
And it's really hard to overcome that culture, because I think everyone would get intellectually, oh yeah, there is no happiness outside of myself. It's an inside game, whatever. And yet, how we behave day after day after day, if you were just outside looking in, you're just like, well, I don't think, based on what he's doing, I don't think Michael really believes that.
Right.
Right?
Well, well, you take the old litmus test. Where are you spending your time? Where's you spending your energy?
Yeah.
That'll tell you what you really believe.
What are you spending the money on when you get it?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. All of those things, the money, the time, the energy. When you look at where all of that is going, you got to say, well, geez, the Michael person of my past was, spending 60, 70 hours a week on that professional stuff.
Yeah.
And so despite, I think, even hearing myself now, I think the old me of pre-2015 would have said, oh, I get that. Of course, there's no happiness out there. I know it's an inside job. And yet, why the hell was I working 60, 70 hours a week then?
Right. Right.
Now, part of it for your listeners and for me, maybe you think you don't want an exit. And then I think you're in a really happy place professionally. Like, that's when I got really happy professionally, when I started saying, oh, I don't need to leave this business.
Right.
I don't need the business to end. I don't have to depart, because I'm really fulfilled doing this business.
Yeah.
Then you're happy. Then, don't seek an exit. Unless it makes sense. Of course, there's always strategic reasons for a business to do an exit. But
right, and at some point you're going to retire or move on to the next thing, or the business will have kind of, there'll be a point, right? But it's not the driver. It's kind of the cherry on top, right? It's like, yeah, I had a good run. I ran a business that I thought was doing good things in the world. I had employees that I cared about, and I had this thing to top it all off. And that's what you were able to do.
That's certainly what I was able to experience, and I don't think
do is probably a strong word.
That's a little much in my vernacular, a little too self-aggrandizing or something. I'm not sure, but it took a right set of circumstances, a right set of people, and a right set of support from the partners and the board that made it all happen. It certainly, I happened to be at the reins at that same time, which I don't think I'm not trying to pretend I didn't have help. I did, but I certainly didn't do it by any means. But what was cool about it was not so much the doing of it, but was the growth of consciousness that happened, the maturity that happened internally during this whole thing, was the maturity to realize, oh, I'm okay either way. Like I'm okay. I'm fine. I don't need some amount of charity work to feel complete. I don't need some amount of professional development to feel complete. I don't need some financial number to feel complete.
Yeah.
And that's a huge relief. That takes all the weight off,
Right.
It's like, that just feels good.
Well, yeah, you don't think, oh my gosh, my world is going to crumble if I don't get this deal done.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, we'll do the best we can, and if it works out, great, and if it doesn't, we're just going to run this business that we really enjoy running.
Well, exactly.
Or
And it
someone
wasn't,
else will come along and we'll do a deal with them.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I really had confidence that it was going to work out, that the
yeah,
business was going to work out one way or another. And it doesn't mean we were, um, it doesn't mean we did less work, meaning we didn't reduce the hours we worked. We
mhm.
just did the hours with less stress.
Ah,
And that's
yeah,
an important distinction. It's not like I said, oh, I'm going to work less because I don't mind, I don't care what happens with the business. Because I did care. I just fundamentally knew I was going to be okay either way. So I did
mhm.
the same amount of work, just the stress wasn't there. The
So it
needing
didn't
to,
feel as effortful.
yes, there was a lot
Yeah,
less effort in it.
yeah,
I just felt like I was doing my best every day. I tried to do my best every day, bring my best to work every day, and then let go of the results.
wow. So is that as you think about, people are potentially watching this who are founders, where you were like 5 years ago, maybe, right? Um, is that what are your words of wisdom? Like, what would you advise them to think about? And then that's clearly one of these is like put in your best effort and be unattached. And it's easy to say, as you know, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Like what is the thing that helped turn that for you to a point where you could actually do it?
Well, the fundamental turning point was the realization that everything I was looking for external was available internally and was available now, not at some future date.
Uh-huh.
That was the fundamental turning point. What enabled that? Well, it's funny because what actually enabled it for me was the crisis of not getting what I was striving for,
Uh-huh. So you just had to
meaning
face it.
meaning not getting that CEO role in 2015
Yeah.
is actually what broke open my awareness. My The image I had of myself sort of disappeared because it didn't happen. This
Uh-huh.
dream image of what I thought my career was going to look like didn't happen.
Yeah.
So when that happened, at first I thought my life was going to crumble.
Uh-huh.
But then a weird thing happened. It didn't. It didn't
Ah,
crumble.
there
my
it
life,
is.
yeah, my life didn't crumble. And I was fine. And then I
Uh-huh.
found out, oh, I see. There's that that's within me that's always fine,
Yeah.
and not dependent on these external circumstances. And once I found that place that was within me that was always fine, then I could go forward and do my best work, not out of fear and not out of the need to prove something, but out of a space of genuinely wanting to give, genuinely wanting to do good in the world, genuinely wanting to use my best talents uh, in a way that was effective in the world. So that was actually the fundamental shift. I wish I could say I did it, but it was me not achieving what I wanted to that caused the crumbling of those old belief systems. And then I
Yeah.
was freed up to act in a totally different way. So I think the question is, could I have known what I know if I didn't get what I wanted? It's an interesting thing to say, can you learn this lesson by hearing it from someone else? Or do you
Yeah.
actually have to fail miserably? Do you have to have a huge failure experience, like the hero's journey? Do you actually have to be defeated, crushed on the ground before you pick yourself back up and then, take the hill? It's
Yeah.
an interesting thing. I don't know if you can actually learn that by reading or by hearing from someone else.
It's a different version of that is, and I've heard this, someone said, and I don't know who, you know, I get that money can't buy me happiness, but I'd sure like to find that out for myself.
Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah, and it can't.
Yeah.
It absolutely can't. And I think everybody who has had this financial experience will tell you that that's true. It can buy you things
Uh-huh.
and experiences, but those things and experiences are actually just okay. So think of it this way. If you think your happiness is outside you, one thing you can do is you can work. Like you can pour yourself into work.
Yeah.
If you then have the financial freedom, let's say, to do whatever you want, if you continue that orientation of happiness is outside of me, what do? Well, you go buy things, you go travel, you go have experiences, you keep looking out for something that someday will make you happy.
Yeah.
And you find these little islands of happiness, moments of happiness, because there is a
There's
very
a
well
satisfaction or
documented,
whatever. Yeah.
proven, yeah, you get something, there is a happiness attached to that temporarily.
Right.
But the lasting happiness doesn't come from a thing, it comes from inside. And it's not dependent on it's not dependent on any external prop. And those props could be work, they could be travel, they could be buying things.
Yeah.
So I think you can go through this whole experience without ever finding lasting happiness. Now you can find temporary happiness, and that's true. That is true. But for me, I found it very unsatisfying after some number of years to seek happiness that way.
Yeah.
And to seek I've always said someday I want to publish that book called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places, because it's
Yeah.
what I did for so long, giving, leading. So going back to your question, what's a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom?
Yeah.
Ask yourself why you want an exit.
Mm.
Don't ask yourself, of course, as a business leader, you have to ask yourself what's good for the business.
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask. That question you are required as the leader of your company to ask that question and ask it frequently. And you should all know the answer to that question for your business.
Yeah.
But then honestly reflect on, for yourself, why do you want an exit?
Yeah.
Is there some gap in your life that you think this exit is going to fill? Right. Whether it be in relationships or your own internal happiness or your connection with friends and family, respect. There's all these underlying driving, I'll just call them insecurity is a strong word, especially with executives.
It's like proving yourself. Yeah, like proving yourself somehow. I will have arrived if I get this done. Like there's different versions of that story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So whatever it is, whatever your answer to that question is, just know the answer to that question is inside of you. It is not dependent on an exit. You could have that right now without an exit.
Wow. Yeah. And that goes back to just do a job you enjoy doing, build a company you enjoy running. And then if these things happen on top of that, great, right? I mean, I think that's what you're saying. Yeah.
It's wonderful when it's wonderful. Several of the partners did really, really well in this transaction. It's funny because of when I joined the company, 5 of the partners did better than me in the transaction. And great, good for them. They took big risks in starting the company. But what was amazing about it is it's unexpected and it's wonderful when it happens because it's so unexpected. It's like, oh, that's cool. Versus I think if I was striving for it, working for it, and then got it, boy, then I would have achieved, then I really would have got my head wrapped around them. I did it, I accomplished something. And then I think I would have been even more stuck in this
Well,
mindset of
and
happiness is out there somewhere.
yeah, and the other thing that I've seen is people come through it and think, I got screwed, and this, I didn't get as much as I should have. Like, they build up this image in their head of how it's supposed to go, and then they evaluate what actually happens against that image. And so this event that should be the happiest day of their life, they come away feeling bitter.
If your core, what I resonate about that is for many years, I had this core belief that life's a struggle.
Yeah.
Life's a struggle. That was my orientation. You have to
Yeah.
force it. You have to use effort.
Yeah.
And you have to use effort, and life's a struggle, and you have to use your effort, your will, your energy, your alliances, and get things done. Make it happen.
Right.
When you do something, when you accomplish something that way, the only feeling you're left with when it's done is the same one you had when it started, which is, it was a struggle, it was hard, it was a lot of effort, and that, it's not, the core attitude doesn't change with the event. If your whole attitude in life is it's a struggle and it's effort, once the exit's there, it's going to be an effort and it's going to be a struggle. If your orientation in life is, it's not fair, people are out to get me, once you have an exit, your orientation is going to be, that wasn't fair, people are out to get me, and then you will become
and now I have to keep people from, like, now I have to put my effort around not losing the money I just got, because people are going to come after me to try to screw me and blah, 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 right? Yeah.
There's so many people that then their whole orientation gets around holding on to what they got, grasping it, hanging on to it, and it becomes so unsatisfying way to live. It's such a narrow lockdown way to live. There's no freedom in it. And the whole reason, for me, one of the greatest joys of having a little bit of financial freedom is the freedom in it. It used to be, oh my gosh, my bike got stolen. I lived, as you know, for many years in an urban environment, and it'd be like, oh, my bike got stolen. See, I'm right. Life's a struggle. It's hard. It takes a lot of effort. I knew it. And now I think, oh, my bike got stolen. Yay, I get a new bike.
Yeah, right.
It's the same event, but now I'm free from the mind shackle of life's an effort, life's a struggle. Well, and we're all caught in those mind prisons, these beliefs that we have that a lot of times are around these apex events, like a sale of a business. Yeah. We think all of a sudden our whole belief system is going to change. Well, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, that's where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing to end on, Michael. Thank you for doing this. I always enjoy talking with you, and I'm glad to hear that the exit was a positive thing for you, and that you learned a lot about yourself in the process. And I know that whoever is watching this is going to get great value from it. So thank you.
Jeff, you had no small part in this, and I want to say I'm really grateful for your friendship and your guidance throughout this whole process. So.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Thank you, Michael.
Right. Take care. Bye.